morning. I heard a story recently about a family business, family shoe business in Germany that really held a whole town together. It was a huge shoe company, the Dassler Brothers Shoe Company, and the boys had built on their father's business, particularly Adolf, who was a creative genius behind it, who studied shoes and particularly sports shoes, and went and talked to sportsmen and women to learn what they needed and to mold the shoes and fix them and adjust them and make them better. And then his brother Rudolph, joined as the marketing genius and marketed these products. It was a really successful business. It suffered a bit through the war, but then the post-war, other things happened. There was kind of enmity and jealousy and mistrust entered into their relationship and broke them apart. The divisions became so great that the families broke apart, and therefore the business. The business was broken open, and there were two factories, one on either side of the river of this little German town, which I can't pronounce. And in the end, Rudy took one factory on one side of the river and Adolf the other. And they created independent shoe companies. Rudy created Puma, and Addy, from his name, his nickname, and the letters of his last name, Adidas. And they became rivals and fought. Addy had the Olympic team in Germany, and Rudolph had the football team, and they tried to market their products. The enmity grew so intense that people in the town sided with one brother or the other. And if you were in Rudy's clique, in Rudy's side, your pub or cafe or bakery or whatever it was wouldn't serve people from Adolph's, and vice versa. It became the town of bent necks because the first thing they did was look down, look at people's shoes and determine which shoes they were wearing, Adolph's or Rudy's, and then work out which side they were on. It's such an enmity and division, and that is so typical of human beings, where little rifts break open relationships. Little slights and mistrusts or jealousies or fears or hurts just break open, hurting people and creating division, separation, conflict and violence. Breaking open families, husbands and wives, something happens and they're torn apart. In anger and hatred results. Or in communities, or between nations. We're seeing so many conflicts in the world at the moment, within nations and between nations, sometimes between nations that once got along or were part of the same collective people. Such conflicts and traditions and hatreds that people forget about what caused them and the history. It just drives this ongoing hatred. In the story this week, Jesus does something that shows us an alternative way, a different way. It's a story about Jews and Samaritans, who in Jesus' time were enemies. Even though they came from the same people, they derived from the same matriarchs and patriarchs, Abraham and Sarah and Isaac and Jacob and so on. In about the 900 BCE, there was a separation. 10 of the tribes or areas became the northern kingdom of Israel, and 2 the southern kingdom of Judah. And they had different kings, and gradually enmity grew, and fights and traditions and laws and tribal whatevers, such that over time, with geopolitical involvement and other things happening, they became enemies. The Samaritans in the north and the Jews in the south. They hated each other. And Jews in Jesus' time wouldn't walk through Samaria to get from the north to the south or vice versa. They would go the long way around to avoid this enemy territory. But this day Jesus walks through the Samaritan territories, and he stops at a well that has a traditional story around Jacob, who created this well and for his people. It's a holy site, and he stops there while his disciples go into the village to get food. While he's there, a woman comes by herself, alone. A Samaritan woman comes. Unusual, because they often came in groups early in the day. This is noon. And she comes to draw water, ignoring this Jewish man. But he communicates with her, he talks with her, which is not only unusual, it's not right, because Jews shouldn't talk to Samaritans and vice versa. But even worse, the cultural and other taboos, a male shouldn't talk to a female without her having family members, male family members with her. He crosses over all the ethnic and cultural and religious and whatever taboos and talks to this woman. And they talk about water. He asks, will she draw him water? And he offers to give her water in return. And she says, but you don't have a bucket. And he says, the water I give is water that will cleanse your soul, your spirit, will touch your deep being. And the conversation goes around in circles, and she's drawn more deeply into this experience and this yearning for something that will touch her soul, that will give her life and renew her. And she sees in this one something different as he reaches out to her across the divides and conflicts and centuries of hatred, to embrace her as a human being and to love her. And in this conversation, he says, he asks her about her personal life, and she says, I don't have a husband. And he says, right, you've had 5 husbands, and the man you're with now is not your husband. And that's speaking into the cultural reality of their land, the political reality. The Assyrians conquered this northern kingdom in the 8th century BCE, and they brought in 5 different cultural groups and intermarried. The current dominating force and power within their land were the Romans, and they didn't intermarry. And he's saying, you have had 5 cultural groups, 5 different husbands who have intermarried, and the current one is not one who will intermarry. You're dominated by these other cultures and these other ideas and these other powers. And there's a sense of release in what Jesus does and says in the political sense, in the personal sense, that Jesus' words, Jesus' way, Jesus' love offers liberation to this woman, to her people, to the enmity between her and the Jewish people, between males and females. All the divisions that humans create and erect between each other can be broken down through love, through understanding, through relationship, through listening to each other, through taking one another seriously. Instead of turning for the guns and the bombs and the metaphorical weapons of war, when we don't like someone, we're afraid of someone, when someone's done something to hurt us or upset us, we reach for love. We sit down and listen. We sit down and hear the other person's story. We understand who they are and where they're coming from, what their fears and hopes and dreams are. And more often than not, some of those hopes and fears and dreams will be ours. There'll be something in there that touches us. As human to human, we begin to relate, to love each other and learn from each other, and recognize that our differences and our diversity, instead of tearing us apart, can bring us together and can offer 2 halves of the solutions we need in our world. If our world could only follow this way of Jesus, which is a way of breaking open enmity and divide and seeking peace through reconciliation, through love, through relationship, the world could be a different place. And many of the world's most significant problems could be overcome. Problems like climate change, international conflicts and hatred and war, the impoverishment of so many people, this massive divide that's growing between the wealthy elites of the world and everyone else, particularly the deeply impoverished people of the world, between indigenous people who have lost their land, their culture, their language, and whose wisdom is fading away. Wisdom we all need. Jesus' way is a way of bringing people together to listen, to put our egos on hold, to put our fears aside, and to go in to listen, to be open to being transformed and liberated in our own right, and offering that love to another. This is the only way for our world. Will we follow in this way of Jesus?